All right, joining us on Radio Exposed, we have Bokeem talking about his podcast, Consumption Junction. Welcome to the show, Bokeem.
Why, thank you for having me.
So I saw, just as I was going on, you're getting a little bit of an argument about some things. We were just talking about penis size, breast size. Let us know what was going on there.
I find it fitting that you're talking about breast size and dick size, and then you switch it over to a guest who's a self-proclaimed dickhead. I really like that. Yeah, real quick, that study, I don't know if I buy it. As much as I want to rah-rah for USA, average is a D cup. Where is this study occurring, and did they count the Midwest? Because I don't buy it, man. I just don't buy it.
Well, you go by population. You have most of your population is in the South, California, and there's definitely lots of things flying around there. I haven't really got it into exactly where the numbers came from, but yeah, they said average D cup on that one.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, if we look, we'll accept those stats as is, even though I do question them a little bit, question the study. But just a little while ago, we were on a little bit of a Twitter argument with my friend Cece about titty size. And her statement was that she doesn't believe that dudes really think much about the size of women's breasts. Her exact quote was, one second, I'm sorry about this. Men are not particularly particular about boobs. I find that to be completely wrong. And I get what you're saying. There's a point system when evaluating a woman, and boobs is just one part of that. However, there's something to be said about first impressions. When you spot someone across the room or at a party or whatever, you don't have the chance to fill out your full scorecard yet. So you're going to be judging on things like pretty of face, size of boob, nice of ass, and therefore, yes, on balance, it's only one component, but you're not leaving as good of an impression if you're an A cup versus a D cup. You feel me on that?
I definitely agree with you on that. Yeah, I've never looked across the bar and said, "Boy, does her personality stick out." I've never done that. But yeah, like if you see like a girl walk, if she looks hot, I do not look at the actual chest. It's just if the whole thing. I'm kind of looking at the whole thing, and chest is definitely part of that. But as long as it looks right, it doesn't have to be big. It just has to look right for me.
No, I can understand that, and you can also skew the other way. Bigger is not always better because you can get to a point where it just doesn't fit the total package. What I'm saying is, okay, if being a hot girl is like being an NBA player, you're playing it at a disadvantage if you're not bringing nice boobs into the mix. If you're flat-chested, that's like being 5'5" and trying to make the NBA. Some can do it. There are your Earl Boykins and your Muggsy Bogues who 5'5", 5'6", make some shit happen. But you're playing at a disadvantage. You're playing at a handicap automatically with tiny titties.
Hey, you better be really funny.
Yes.
Yes. Fill out that scorecard some other way.
No, agreed. If you can fill your blouse with a sense of humor and laughs, that helps. I'm completely with you on that.
So, Bokeem, first of all, before we start this, what are you drinking?
I'm not yet, man. I'm not. You got me timing-wise. You got me out of my zone. Should I pour myself a couple fingers of scotch just to keep it real?
I would say please do. Every show you start out, with what you and Ms. Chartreuse are drinking and whatever guest you have on. And, yeah, it seems to be a staple of your show. I would love to do it. However, we're live, and I do 2 straight hours, and I can't stop to go to the bathroom.
Fair point. I'm icing up my glass right now, and to answer your question, what I'm going to be drinking is what's become a staple of the Consumption Junction podcast, which is the Glenlivet Single Malt Scotch. And if the nice folks over at Glenlivet want to sponsor the podcast, hey, I'm dropping your name every night to begin with, so bring it.
Yeah, I would definitely send a couple emails their way. All right, some of the topics you guys have talked about are the Grammys, politics, Taco Bell, alcohol, race, Southwest Airlines, which I want to get into a little bit later because I have never had a bad experience with Southwest Airlines. One tiny experience, and I'm pretty sure that was more Midway than Southwest Airlines. But do you have any other topics that you've been looking forward to talking to in some of your other shows?
Well, I've got a couple recordings that I'm actually in the process of editing. One that I'm hoping to post tonight, tentatively titled "The Hate Cast," where effectively me and Ms. Chartreuse go back and forth about things that we don't like, that piss us off, and they range from the way Chicago police officers drive to the fact that when I go into Dominic's at 11 at night to buy booze, there's one counter open and it's the 18-year-old who needs to have an adult come over to scan my bottle of scotch. So I really like that topic because I went off on 3 or 4 different rants where I'm kind of foaming at the mouth, and I enjoy doing that. It's part of the reason we do the podcast. The other one is one of my buddies, Nick, is tattoo guy, big dude, and he's the first person I ever saw wearing an Ed Hardy T-shirt. So we call the episode "Confessions of a Former Ed Hardy Douchebag," in that how this tattoo culture thing that when I met him, it actually really fit him well. It was his thing, and then 6 months later, you've got all sorts of Guidos and scumbags wearing that stuff, and it was basically a piece of the tattoo culture that was hijacked from him by douchebaggery. So those are the two that are coming up. When it comes to topics, we keep it pretty open. The two things we won't touch on, and you'd mentioned politics. The Donald Trump podcast, we kind of touched on politics a little bit, but it was really more pop culture. We were looking at his presidential run and why it's kind of silly. But we try to stay away from politics because, quite frankly, neither of us are all that interested. When I started my blog, I started writing about politics, and eventually it just wore on me. I lost interest, and it's not fun. It's not as fun as just random potpourri that we throw at it. And the other topic we don't touch on is sports, just because Ms. Chartreuse isn't interested, and I have other vehicles for talking my sports shit that I do through other podcasts.
I agree with you on both counts because you usually with sports and politics, you're either talking to somebody who is definitely in the know and you're not changing their mind, or you're talking with a complete dumbass and you're not changing their mind. So it just turns into a shouting match. It gets no results at all. So if it's funny, we'll talk about it. If it's kind of life-changing, like some of the Bears stuff, I stopped being a Bears fan because of some of the stuff that happened, and I needed to vent my anger, and I don't care about what anyone else thought about what was going on with the whole cover thing. But I try to stay away from actual, we're not going to break down today's Sox game, but, we might have an odd baseball discussion where we're talking about steroids, but something off, topic involving sports. That's
you're not breaking down stats or anything like that because, quite frankly, you limit your audience a bit by doing so. There's sports radio exists for a reason. People tune into it. People aren't looking to say Ms. Chartreuse for her commentary on sports. We share the podcast, so we've got to please both sides.
Yeah, I do like the back and forth between you and Ms. Chartreuse, the other co-host for Consumption Junction. Do you guys talk about, before the show starts, some of you, what you're going to do back and forth, or is that all just spur of the moment, good chemistry between you guys?
Well, it's a mix of the two. Ms. Chartreuse is my live-in lover as well, so we have plenty of opportunities to chat about topics that are coming up, and so we often do. We're always kind of spitballing topics back and forth. I'm more the type that during the week I'll make a few notes here and there of things I might want to touch on because nothing pisses me off more than having a funny point and not getting it out when we're recording. Ms. Chartreuse is more the type who will spend half hour, 40 minutes before we actually start recording and doing some research, taking notes as well. So there definitely is some prep work. We've actually thrown away some episodes where we didn't do the prep work because, maybe I'm not keeping it real by not posting certain stuff, but my thing is if I'm not going to laugh at it, nobody else is going to laugh at it, so I'm not even going to bother fucking posting it.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of your favorite topics you guys have covered so far?
I would say, let me think. I think the Grammys podcast, which was actually episode 2, I think that was some of our best work. I tend to think that the one that I'm again hoping to release tonight, the Hate Cast, is really, really solid. in terms of individual topics, it's hard to say. Anything that can elicit a passionate response. So I don't want to talk about, we've talked about doing episodes like, well, let's talk about holidays and how there are so many stupid holidays. And, as I thought through that, I said, I can't rant about that. I don't feel strongly about that. So anything just in general that can elicit a strong response, whether that's I like this, I hate this, or this is bullshit, that's what I'm looking for. And, ultimately, it's hard coming up with podcast topics. That's the recording, the coming, actually having the back and forth. We feel that comes easy to us. It's what's the idea? What are we going to talk about tonight? That tends to be so very challenging. And guests really, we've got a few people on Twitter who want to be guests. We love that because they always bring some fresh new ideas to the table.
Yeah, guests have been, and I've had really good luck with guests over our 3+ months now. Today was actually the first guest that we ended up not getting. And he's in Vegas, so I'm pretty sure I know what happened. For those of us that have been to Vegas, it's like, oh, okay, he's probably passed out somewhere. I'm like, okay, I understand. We'll get a hold of you next time. But, yeah, I love having the guests on and having odd discussions. We have bands, different podcasters on. Topics, God, for us, they're all over the place. We just find anything funny. The topic we have on next might be one of our best topics we've ever done. And then I've been telling people vodka tampons. So after you, vodka tampons are happening next for the listening public.
Being that I lack a vagina, are vodka suppositories a thing, or is that a market that I can corner?
You can actually do it. From my research, 25% of the people doing this are male.
Oh, awesome. Because, quite frankly, I'm not a big fan of things going into my butt. I much prefer things coming out of my butt. But if it's going to get me fucked up, I am all for it. I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
Well, keep on listening, because there's things that are going to be happening to people's things, and tampons are related. All right,
I do apologize if I cuss a little bit too much. It's kind of a habit, and I've kind of downed my 3 fingers of Glenlivet, so that brings on more cussing out of me.
The cussing is what I think one of the staples of your show, actually. Like, if it wasn't there, I don't know if some of the topics, like, you definitely have a full understanding of words, and you use them all. Like, that's the best way I could put it.
Well, thank you for that. And the cussing is something that actually horrifies my mom, because she's a pretty loyal listener of the podcast. She likes hearing our voices, and she'd put on my Facebook wall, I'm really liking this episode. You really don't cuss very much. And I'm like, hey, well, how far into it are you? And, 10 minutes later, the response came that basically the wheels fell off and the F-bombs started dropping. We're appropriate and we're necessary. I don't cuss for shock value. I cuss because it's fun and it sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, for us, like, we're allowed to do it. I don't do it. The only reason I don't do it is because I want to cut these up and try to make a demo out of it. So I can't show people like, hey, here FM station, you take my voice and you put me on your air, and I'm going to drop the F-bomb 9 times in this show. Like, I can't do that. So, and we let the guests do it all they want, but you rarely will hear it unless we're doing a death pool. So I definitely swore a couple times last week.
Gotcha. It makes sense. Different goals. I get that you're putting together a demo reel. To be completely honest, Ms. Chartreuse and I have no idea what the end result is to the podcast. We enjoy doing it, and the only short-term goal I have in mind is if I can drop in some advertising and just break even on my website hosting, which is like $10-15 a month, I would be one happy camper. That's actually like my American dream right there is, can I generate $15 of income a month off this podcast? It'd be great.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for too. Just somebody, cause like we're at about maybe 40 a month, putting this on live, and yeah, like I would be really cool if somebody could just take that cost from me. Absolutely. Now, one of your guests, you have a frequent guest, and once in a while I chit chat back and forth with him on Twitter. Is Tyler Conium. He's got his own podcast. He's made several appearances on Consumption Junction. How did you guys hook up, and what's going on there?
Well, the backstory there is that and I'm by no means am I bragging, but I was an early adopter of Twitter in that one of my geeky friends was like, you need to check this out back in 2008 or whatever. And Ms. Chartreuse and I had met through a mutual friend a year before that, and then when I signed up on my Twitter account, she reconnected with me there, and that's actually what got our relationship going. Is the conversations we had on Twitter became phone conversations, became full-blown relationship. And at the same time, there wasn't a hell of a lot of people on Twitter at the time, and what was being contributed wasn't all that interesting. Twitter was really fucking boring. So one of the first people I started following was Tyler, because he's been putting out a lot of volume. He'll put out 70 tweets a day. They're funny. They're at times angry. They're ranting. They're very much in the same wheelhouse in terms of the content that I try to produce. So been following the dude for a couple years, and he started up his podcast about a month prior to us, and that's what really inspired us to get going and start up Consumption Junction, because Ms. Chartreuse and I had been talking about it for well over 2 years. It was our first date was hooking up at her house and recording a podcast that we never used. That's the lost tapes that nobody will ever hear. So Tyler really inspired us, and we've been communicating back and forth for 2 years. He inspired us to get the podcast going, and he's a regular guest on ours, as you said, and I'm a fairly frequent guest on his. That's where I do all my NBA talk, is on Tyler Conium's podcast, Anybody Listening. Great show. To give a plug, if I can, highly recommend that in addition to Consumption Junction, folks check out Anybody Listening.
Yeah, it is a good listen. I listened to a couple of theirs today, and one of the things that I wanted to say about the show that I checked out today is what you were saying about trying to liven up the NCAA game, try to have more rules. I say that there's no reason to do that. The NCAA game is all betting. No one cares about the actual content of it. Get a developmental league going. If they want to leave early, there's no reason for them to even go to school. If they're not going to go to class, then why bother?
But they already have the NBA DL, and with the requirement that you can't come out of high school and go into the NBA, you can go play D-League basketball for a year. Nobody does that because you're not on as big of a stage, and you're not going to become the Kemba Walker or the Jimmer Fredette. I hate that name. Because nobody's watching D-League games, but the D-League does exist. I'm with you that the NCAA tourney exists because of gambling. What pisses me off as a basketball lover is that, I wish people buzzed half as much about the NBA playoffs as they did the NCAA March Madness tournament, because the product is just so much better. It's so much more enjoyable. I wish I had more people to talk about, these games. I wish I had people who are interested in talking about, what the Magic Hawks matchup is going to look like. I'm a basketball nerd. I dig that stuff, but people are more interested in talking about Butler's improbable run to the championship game, and frankly, I don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, to me, it's all, if you can make the NBA a little, Vegas right now is the only thing that you can gamble with NBA on. There's no brackets or anything. If you can do that, that's where the NBA playoffs will start to blossom. NCAA, if they go straight from high school to pros, to developmental league, to Europe, to Turkey, so some of the players are just leaving. They're going to play their year in Turkey. They're going to make $2-3 million, and then they're going to go sign up for the NBA draft. They're just going to have brackets. No matter how bad the NCAA product is going to be, they have brackets.
Well, true, but the NBA playoffs are arranged in a bracket system. The thing is, it's only 16 teams, and you don't see the brackets printed very much because it's very easy to follow that. Winner of Bulls Pacers plays winner of Hawks Magic. So you don't need. There's not as compelling of a need for printing out a bracket, but if people want to do that, they can do that today. It's just not a humongous bracket that includes 40 shit teams that have no chance of winning a title. 16 teams go to the NBA playoffs. Of them, this year it's going to be 6 or 7 that have a shot at winning the NBA title, and there's only going to be 7 teams that it's completely out of the question for. There's actually 9 teams that could win the title this year. I like those odds, and it makes for an exciting tournament.
The one thing with the NCAA, though, that the pros don't have, the 8th seed, if they get knocked out in the first round, all they get is they only get one guaranteed game at home. That's all they get is the box office for that. For NCAA, each conference that's represented gets money. Each school gets money. You know, if they got this tournament, obviously 50 teams aren't going to matter, but all those kids get it's still a school, it's still a learning thing. You get a travel date, you get a couple $100 for your stipend. You get some cool meals. You get to see a city you probably haven't been to before. Yeah, I dig the experience when it comes to college. But obviously, when people say like, "Oh, college game's so much better," no, it's not. It's bad.
No, it's patently false, and that's why, as I mentioned on Tyler's podcast, I think you could raise the quality of play if the tournament wasn't 68 teams, but it was 65 last year. They upped it to 68. They're never ever going to make the tournament smaller. They have no compelling reason to, because it is just such a cash cow. And I can't understand how a game that ends with a score of 90 to 43, because there are tons and tons of blowouts, especially in the first round of the NCAA tourney. I don't understand how that generates money. Somehow it does. And that to me is probably the most shocking piece of it, is that more than half the first round ends with just incredible blowouts, and people are still like buying into it, tuning in. I'm sorry, if a team, even the beloved Bulls, if they're up on somebody 30 at the half, I'm probably tuning out, because what am I going to see? It's not going to be as entertaining as a close game, or a game where the margin at halftime, 6 or 10 even.
Here's where it generates money. Let's say Duke's playing Delaware State. Obviously, this is going to be a huge Duke blowout. Delaware State gets maybe $300,000-$400,000. The conference that Delaware State is in, they got in because they won their conference tournament. No other team in that conference got in. They're the only representative. The conference gets like $2 million, and Duke was probably a 44-point favorite. So you have people with the betting slips going, oh, at least they have to win by 44, or just keep it within 44 because I bet that Delaware State. That's where the interest, the money, that's where that's all generated.
No, that's true, and the NCAA tournament's beholden to Vegas in that way, because that's where the most commerce happens. Is I'm not a gambler, but I would never bet a 44-point line in basketball. I don't care who the hell's playing. I don't care if it's the 96 Bulls against a team that plays at the YMCA. I'm not. 44 is too big of a fucking spread. But the other piece, why do I care if Delaware State generates a few $20,000, $30,000? Why do I care if their conference does? Have a fucking bake sale. Do something else. Don't put crappy basketball on and have that dominate. It dominates the sports scene, and that's what bothers me. Is the NBA playoffs are coming in 2 weeks. There's some amazing storylines. There's some great basketball going on. The Nuggets beat the Lakers today. The Nuggets, who just lost Carmelo Anthony and are like 15-4 since the trade. So improbable. They lost their 2 best players. This is an incredible story, but I have to hear about, I go on ESPN's homepage, I have to hunt for that, because they're still posting fucking stories about Jimmer fucking Fredette. I want to hear about that fool. He's no good at hoops. He's another fucking Adam Morrison. I don't care about yet another white kid that the NCAA markets and pushes down our throat, because he can hit a 20-foot shot. That's meaningless to me. So that's probably what bothers me more than anything, is the attention and the fact that as somebody who consumes sports news, it gets in the way of, to me, what's important.
Yeah, basically, Jimmer Fredette's, like, for people that aren't paying attention, that's what Steve Kerr looked like at Arizona.
Exactly.
That's about what that's going to be. That's the tops, is about your Steve Kerr run-of-the-mill player.
Is there, and I do apologize, and you probably knew this before I came on, but that I'm big on the long responses, but I've been working on this theory. Is there a race component to the NCAA? Because it seems
yes.
like it's Tyler Hansbrough, Adam Morrison, Jimmer Fredette. This is by design that these guys are stars, right? So it appeals to a broader audience.
Most definitely. If Tyler Hansbrough were black, he would just be another guy like a Mac, like the guy on Shane Mack, I think his name is, on Butler. He's probably their best player, but who's getting all the pub? Howard.
Oh, I don't even. I'm sorry. What was that?
Howard, the kind of big. He's got like the Caucasian afro thing going, the long hair, big kind of lanky guy. I think he's number 54. He's the one getting all the pub. Last year it was Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward was the best player on that team last year, but Shane Mack was kind of the guy that hits all the shots. And same thing this year. Like go for the weird white guy, because the weird white guy is the one getting the stuff. Yes, you're definitely not. You don't have an odd theory there. That's definitely there.
Well, I think it's sad that they have to do that, because, you know, it's not like a black athlete isn't marketable. The NFL is America's new pastime, and I get that the biggest face is Peyton Manning, who's as white as you can possibly get. But there's no shortage of black stars in the NFL who are in commercials and making mounds and mounds of money. So I don't understand why we have this, like, Reconstruction era notion that black doesn't sell when it comes to sports. It's mind-boggling to me. Or look who saved baseball after the strike. Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds. Last time I checked, at least one of them's still a brother. Sammy Sosa's got his own thing going on with his skin lightening, but they're black dudes. And Sammy Sosa's I guess he's Dominican or whatever, but not exactly the type of person that resonates with middle America, yet they're the ones who brought baseball back. So what is this antiquated fucking notion that that black athletes don't sell and you need a cracker to make the sport big? Or maybe it's a formula that works. I don't know. Maybe that's why the NCAA is as big as it is.
Yeah, who knows? They do a little bit with football, too. I know Urlacher kind of benefited from that. And his main rival was definitely on trial for murder. So there's always going to be that type of component. All right, lastly, back to the podcast. When I first started listening, you guys, like, the first thing that turned me on to you guys was the actual sound quality. What's some of the equipment that you guys use? Like, what do you use for the microphones? What's your editing component? You know, what are you doing there?
And I apologize for the background noise real quick. I did just step outside. I'm not sure if you can hear that. In terms of the gear, I'm using a USB mixer from Behringer. It's nothing all that extraordinary. It was about $200 though. In terms of mics, Ms. Chartreuse has always been on a nice